On today's podcast, I'm joined by the one and only Simon Leadbetter, who's here to talk us through the newest Voice of the Agent report, talking all about sales and lettings in the UK. So you want to be clued up for your next instruction, this is the podcast to listen to. Hope you enjoy it. If you're an estate agent that wants to stay ahead of the competition and to make more profits, then you need to talk to Iceberg Digital. Iceberg doesn't just sit alongside your CRM system, it replaces it. It's the UK's leading AI operating CRM system for estate agents, combining your CRM system, prospecting, marketing, website, and compliance all in one ecosystem. Your CRM system becomes fully automated, taking care of those repetitive tasks your team shouldn't be doing. Your prospecting runs 24/7, scanning the portals, capturing property addresses, matching them with your database, and sending them personal outreach faster than any human ever could. Your marketing is automatically written to match your tone of voice. Blogs, property descriptions, vendor updates, all done for you. And your website becomes AI driven, adapting to each visitor in real time and making your agency discoverable on Google and also on tools like ChatGPT. Agents across the UK are already using Iceberg to run a leaner, smarter, and more profitable business. Visit icebergdigital.co.uk and mention the Estate and Consultancy podcast when you book your demo to get an exclusive perk. When I say Simon, you say Leadbetter. Simon.
Leadbetter.
Hey, there we go. As if we had it all rehearsed. Simon, thank you for coming back on the podcast. I would say friend of the show. You've been on so many times now that you're basically going to replace me very shortly, and it'll just be the Simon show. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast all over again.
It will.
Why are you here? Because you've got a brand new Voice of the Agent out. Tell me all about it.
Yeah, so the Voice of the Agent, I can't believe we're actually in our fourth year. So what started as a mad idea in 23 became a bigger idea in 24, went epic in 2025, and now has gone monthly in 2026. So in my mission to understand markets better than anyone, and I do that with all of my clients, is help them understand their markets, I need to understand my market. So we did the Voice of the Agent really to kind of do proper research on what people actually who do the job think. That's what the Voice of the Agent is. We now combine a whole blend of researching our own databases. We've got a big database, and also using an independent research house to make sure it's genuinely representative. So we get our own selfish reasons to understand the market better than anyone. But because I think this data is useful to everyone, we give it out to everyone for free. All they need to do is give us their email address and they get the report.
That's a good deal. As far as as deals go, that's a pretty darn good deal. So have you mentioned now you're in the fourth year. How have you seen sort of Voice of the Agent evolve from sort of like a baby 4 years ago, where it kind of like was a brand new thing? How has it evolved over those 4 years with regard to sort of the answers you get, the research you find at the back of it? How's it kind of grown over that time?
I think the big thing we've noticed is it's becoming ever more representative. When I first did it as a thought experiment back in 2023, it was sort of the people that I knew. So we still got over 500 responses, so it was more than my direct connections, but it lent more towards where my background had been. So it skewed affluent, to be honest with you, more to the upper quartile, because I had most recently, before I launched it, been the CEO of Fine& Country and then the ran marketing for Knight Frank. We made a deliberate effort each month as it went, every year as it went by, to make it more representative. It's still ultimately representative of people who fill in surveys. There is that aspect of um, survey bias that we can't get over. People who just don't fill in surveys, it's hard to know what they think. One of the things we've done there, for the reason why we made it monthly, is the first. Did you fill in the first survey when we did it? Did you fill in?
Testing my memory. We'll say yes. We'll be optimistic and say yes, I did. Loved it. Loved filling it in.
I think the average time to complete it was something like 54 minutes.
Mm.
And the problem with that is by the time you get to the final few questions, a smaller percentage of people are actually filling the questions. So we've now got the surveys down to it literally takes 5 minutes to fill it in. And that's improved its representativeness. So what have we seen change is the two big changes that we see is um, the adoption of technology is coming through quite loudly and how people are embracing it. Certainly AI is a big one that came out last year and the year before. And when we release the report in March, will be evidenced again, plus a big project we're doing with YouGov that's coming into that one as well. As I say, it's more representative. Confidence is okay. We haven't, I mean, January 2025 was really confident, and then the year ground people down. We've got a lot more caution this year, which is interesting. And the other thing that we're really noticing is that because we make the data available online completely freely, is all the LLMs have picked it up. So if you type in into most LLMs about what's going on in the estate agency market, the voice of the agent will often come up as a source, which is kind of nice because it's been nationally coveraged in the trade press. It's been picked up occasionally by the consumer press. And the smartest people in the room like you, Chris, read it.
Absolutely. So you start off, speaking of reading it, I read your introduction, which I thought was very good. And you talked about it being a story of not a collapse, but obviously not a sudden recovery as well, but a market to learning to live in its new weather, I think was the expression. So talk me through what you mean by that.
Yeah, I think, I mean, come this April, I've been in the property industry for 10 years. And we had uh, the EU referendum in 2016. We've had COVID, lots of changes of government, Ukraine, change of regimes, both in the UK and then across the pond in the United States. And ours is a market that doesn't particularly like change. And as in people who are buying and selling houses don't particularly like change. And we don't seem to, as a market, albeit the 20A data and stuff like that shows actually the market is robust. The mood in the camp is one of cautious optimism to sort of a very gentle pessimism.
Mm.
And we're not getting the clear run that the property market really does need to thrive. Plus, there's all sorts of internal changes, the rise of self-employment. That's challenging all the big brands in the industry, and that we can talk about that in one of the sessions that we do about what that means for the market. Um, but yeah, there's a lot of uncertainty out there.
And there seemed to be a sort of slight undertone of slightly a slight negative bias with regard to how agents describe the current marketplace. But then if you look at the stats actually for the year, I think I've got a few in front of me now. So 1.71 new instructions, 1.2 million sales agreed, and transactions up about 10% year on year. So that sounds, if you just gave me those figures and said, how does this year compare to that year? You'd go, oh, sounds good, like 10% up, high five, thank you very much. But it feels like there's sort of a negative sentiment, even though the figures look okay.
Yeah, I mean, I was with an agency up in the northwest yesterday. We're filming this literally mid Feb, and you know, property prices are up, volumes are up in a lot of their areas where they operate. But then, if you look at the survey results, how we describe current marketing conditions, 19% say strong or very strong, 30% say weak or very weak. So that leans, despite 50%, a perfect 50% are exactly in the middle. That's actually, it's the question of perception versus reality.
Mm.
And that's what I mean about this cautious optimism, reserved pessimism. And it leans towards a reserved pessimism is the data we get from the likes of 20A say, it's all right, guys. We're okay as a market. Um, the feeling in the camp is, "Oh, it's tough out there, guys. And the market's not that strong." So yeah, it is, and that's why it's important to get perception and reality. It's why we also do the consumers as well. Is there is a disconnect between what people perceive the market is doing and the reality of the market. Um, hey, the nice thing is in the report that's going to be coming out this month, which is February, talks about what marketing people do, and we are able to filter out the growth agents, the ones who actually are growing successfully, and say what they are doing. So if you are struggling, read the February report and it'll tell you what the growth agents are doing. So you can just essentially, as I've done my entire career, imitate the best.
Mm. So it's almost like, hindsight is the exact science, isn't it? It's because, you always think to yourself, like, if you think back when you were, I don't know, 17, 18 years old, and you think to yourself, cool, I'm quite tired at the moment when I wake up in the morning. And then you're like, no, when you're 40 years old, you wake up, you're tired in the morning. When I'm 80, I'll look back and think, oh, you don't know how good you had it when you were 40, waking up in the morning. It's only when you look back in the past, you actually kind of realize whether how good or bad you had it. So at the time, you're like, oh, it's quite good or it's not bad. You don't really know, but it's only in hindsight in a year's time, 2 years' time, you look back and go, actually, the market was quite good or actually wasn't that great at all.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And again, the fundamentals in the property market remain okay. Of course, we'd love them to be booming, but we sort of had the boom with all the stuff that was going on after COVID. And that was a weird time for everybody, but it wasn't a normal time for everybody. We're more kind of normal than people probably think at the moment. Uh, um, But yeah, I mean, you read the newspapers, you if you follow the news like I'm sure most people in the industry do, it is one long, relentless stream of negativity. It's hard not to feel a bit down, especially if you're in the UK at the moment. For anyone who is listening overseas, it has been wet for a very, very long time.
The most British podcast. We're on the weather within 5 minutes. So let's
Hey,
let's
we're talking about the two best things. We're talking about weather and property. This is a national pastime.
this is the grand slam. We'll bring in the potholes in a minute. So let's talk about the average time to secure a sale because it hits 77 days, which is the longest in 9 years, and fall throughs top 300,000, which is a big old number. What do you think is going on there?
Oh god, I mean, and if you look at the new instruction to actual completion, that's now pushing well over 6 months. We've got ourselves into a terrible mess. I think the key thing, and we saw this in part 4 of the Voice of the Agent last year, which talks about voice of the consumer, but also the voice of the conveyancing, is to expedite a quick sale. And Claire Yates talks about this brilliantly, is down to the agent to get the house ready to sell. There's speed to sell and the speed to market. And we need to focus as an industry on speed to sell, which is I bought a house last year. Some may have noticed I mentioned that maybe once or twice or even a million times on LinkedIn. Built in 1659, doesn't have foundations. There were challenges. But we've got another place that we're going to this weekend. But we were renting work, which was close to my work down in Hertfordshire. So we were renting. We could move out very quickly, move into the new house. The house wasn't ready to sell. They hadn't got retrospective planning permission for things. Because we were trying to preserve money, did not instruct our conveyancer quick enough. And I think you've talked about this actually. You did actually on one of your videos the other day, which I really liked, is the desire to be liked sometimes means you're not, well, I don't forget the word you used, but th to be respected, you need to be honest. And I think that's where we need to, as an industry, to be a professional, we need to say is, look, we want to properly get your house ready to sell. So sell high and sell fast, as Elaine Penhall would say. So what we're going to do is we're going to get everything, get all your documents ready. Have you instructed your conveyancer, yeah? Because you need to get your conveyancer lined up so that the moment we're ready, let's go. Our documents, I'm sure that our electricity was installed before there was any street lighting because it's ancient. There's a hell of a lot of, what's it called, Baker, the old plastic kind of stuff in the house. And the thermostat's in Fahrenheit. I don't know where they got that, to be honest with you. Um, so get all that fixed and ready, get the lawyers lined up, and then critically, your job is to communicate between the various parties and move the sale along. Again, name dropping like there's no tomorrow, but Christopher Watkin and others are brilliant at this. Is almost winning the instructions is the job. No, winning the sale, getting the completion is the job, and it's why I think self-employed agents who do the whole process do so well. People like Chartwell Noble and EXP, the biggest at the moment, but Chartwell Noble, because they're managing the whole sale from beginning to end, they will get it through the whole process as well because they only eat what they kill. But we've sort of developed a culture is I've won, I've got the instruction, but I only sell half of them. And then I was actually talking to David Opie, who's the editor of Today's Conveyancer, only for our own podcast only about a week ago, at the beginning of this week, actually. And, it's a tough job. And, they're not fantastically well paid. They're hugely overworked. Um, the law is the law. I mean, it's not like a sales job where you can kind of massage the truth a little bit to get things over the line. The law's pretty binary, so you have to go through a process. So I think where we've got to is there's been a loss of people within the conveyancing side. Was it PM Law went under the other day, about a week or so ago, which took a lot of people out of the market. We've lost a lot of experienced conveyancers, which means now there's a bottleneck of work. I think we've lost the art of a state agency, which is we had people in our industry who knew the process was to get the completion, not just to win the instruction. And it's that process that is the art of a state. Don't put it on a portal and pray. You actually, once you've got the instruction, you guide it through to the point where it completes. And you're on it all the time because that's how you get paid. And I think we almost need to go back to, despite we live in a world of AI doing being able to do everything, it can't. Is we need to get to a process where the individuals in the industry talk to one another, not are adversarial, and navigate the sale quicker. But the best thing everyone can do, and I sound like a broken record, and I'll shut up in a second, is get the property ready to sell.
Mm.
Yeah, don't put it on the market until you are confident that property is ready to sell, and that way there'll be the fewest amount of delays in the process and the greatest chance of a chain not collapsing.
I guess it's vanity over sanity, and I think
Yeah.
the bit I still laugh at. I don't know whether you're watching the new series of The Apprentice at all there, but there's a chap on there, and his big claim to fame. I think his CV read something along the lines of, "Once you sell your first million, it's all easy after that sort of thing." And he got pulled up really quickly, saying, "Is that revenue?" He went, "Oh yeah, it's revenue," and he was like, "That's not profit." He said, "That's revenue." And I was like, "What a muppet!" Straight away. So.
Oh, oh, yeah. Again, on that front, we've gone through we've gone through a bit of a period in the business. I mean, we had done really well on turnover, but we'd slightly missed the trick on profit. And I realized that actually, as the decisions we'd made, we were actually becoming less productive, less effective, and we just need to turn things up. Yeah, it's the old line. You're absolutely right. Profit is sanity, turnover is vanity. Instructions are sheer vanity. Completions completions are the sanity bit, because that's hey, we know this. That's when we all get paid.
Let's talk through. So there was I'd say a big change. I mean, it was built up as a big change, anyway, so it's a big change in the grand scheme of things. There was the over £2 million house tax, let's call it, or surplus charge, whatever they're calling it these days, coming on.
Mhm.
And then so there seems to be a bit of a drop with regard to people searching and buying properties over £2 million. Has a big effect on the market? It seems like it's around sort of a 19-20% sort of dip off the back of it. Is that sort of the waves that are coming off of this?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we didn't dig too deeply into the prime space in this report. We've got a thing called a prime cut that comes out in April, where we look more deeply in that. But if I look at the press coverage from the likes of Knight Frank and Savills, there are clouds, and we have seen a diminution of searches and listings. And I think there was a whole period of uncertainty of what the longest lead up to and inappropriate trailing of the content of budgets we've ever had in this country. Is people just like, oh, I'm not quite sure. And also, right now, the UK probably isn't the best market for incoming wealth. And yeah, there's all sorts of debates about the Henley Partners research, which is debunked and bunked, depending on where you sit on that spectrum of arguments. But we are seeing a bit of a net outflow of individual wealth. Certainly speaking to the guys in the FX world. So yeah, um, who knew if you tax something more, you suppress demand?
As if by magic.
That's how
Who
it
that was
works.
that?
That's the nature. You do more marketing, you're richer. You lower the prices for things, you sell more. You tax something a bit more, you sell less. It's called supply and demand economics. It's kind of on the first page of every economics A level textbook, and it's almost like I don't think we should defy them.
So let's look at the one of the things that really kind of caught my eye, should we say, on the report, is that it showed about 75% of all the instructions out there are under £500,000, so they're under £500,000. Yet they generate less than half the fees income in the estate agency world. So on the other side of it, 1% of the prime instructions, they generate 10% of all the fees that come through.
Yeah. Um, it's fair to say that my prime friends like Ross Daniello at Chartwell Noble, David Linley over at By Design, and the guys over in Knight Frank and Savills, they love this chart. Because you win twice if you operate in the prime. It's so unfair. I mean, it's doubly unfair. As the report shows, for those who are following along, I think it's around about page 38 or something like that. But anyway, um, it shows, and it has done now for 3 years consistently. If you look at prices and fees, the higher the fee, sorry, the higher the price of the house, the higher the fee. So you're getting a larger percentage of a higher value property. So if everything was equal and fair, you'd all get the same average fee. And therefore, because you had a bigger house, your fee in cash terms would be bigger. But that was because, as a percentage of the house, it's a higher value house. double that. It's like 1.8% versus like 1.1%. Not quite double, but the point is you're getting a higher percentage of a higher value house, so you literally win twice. And it blows my mind is, what, as you say, 1% of the properties in the UK generate 10% of fee income, and it's 76% of properties generate 42%. And that's kind of tough, you know. Um, it's not. I often joke it's the same work for more money. It's not. There's a lot of involved in the hiring, and it's more volatile because there's fewer of them, and it's not as frequent. But I knew partners in the Knight Frank world who would sell 4 to 5 houses a year. Listen to that, everyone. For those who sell 20, 30 houses a year, would sell 4 to 5 houses a year and have a very nice income as a result of it. You don't need many £200 million houses at 2.5% to have a very nice income. Um, yeah, and now it's I mean, others have surfaced this data before, but it's really clear that the prime space is moving away from the rest of the market, albeit things like the mansion tax have suppressed demand a little bit, um, up to a fifth, as some of the data say. There's still a lot to go around for those people. There are the very few agencies who specialize in that area. I'm doing some work at the moment for the Prime Cut, which actually looks at the actual number of agents that operate properly in the prime space. And again, it's a demand supply thing, which is there are fewer agents than you would anticipate chasing those properties. So it's the demand for a prime agent exceeds the supply of prime agents, which will probably explain why they can charge more.
I guess it's a bit like the jobs market. So if I wanted to get a job at Tesco's, for example, I would probably be competing against 50, 100 different people who all have the same, GCSEs or not GCSEs, because it's such a, I don't say basic jobs, that's rather the way of putting it, but it's such a foundation level job that you can get into that automatically you're competing against a lot of people straight away because it kind of ticks the box for a lot of people. Whereas if I was, I don't know, let's say I was applying to the CEO of Coca-Cola, there's probably 5 people in the world that are on that checklist. So straight away, I've got a 1 in 5 chance of getting that job if I'm on that checklist. Whereas if I'm going against Tesco's, I'm 1 in 100 straight away.
Yeah, well, we know this. If you are selling a proper prime house, let's say £3 million plus, there's not a single estate agent in the country who, if I said name three names who would be up for that, we wouldn't probably all think of the same two initially. It just because there's only those two who operate in that space consistently, and then there's another list of the other possibilities that are available. Normally, a local independent who does operate in that space, a more regional prime brand, and then the peculiar blend of who has an office in that area, and that changes. But and I'm not going to say the names because they get enough promotion anyway. One of them's yellow, one of them's red. We all know who they are instantly because they're proper brands, and that's it. But there's only two of them. Whereas if you go to the more mainstream market, below 500,000, down to even 250, £300,000, more like the average price of properties in the UK, I could probably name 20, 30. In the industry, I could probably name 50 agents nationally who could deal with them. And then locally, I could probably name, and our research shows this, most agents in the UK think they have 12 competitors, not the prime guys. The prime men and women, they probably have two or three they compete with. And it's again, I think we should do, or maybe you and I need to write a book called Economics for Estate Agents. This is just pure economics 101. Um, and lots of other debates about other things that go on in the property market is your job in marketing your business, and I will bang on about marketing until I die probably, is you need to increase the demand for you such that it exceeds the supply. Probably the best example of this is Modern House. So if you haven't found, go and look at Modern House. They have a waiting list. So they have a deliberately created scarcity where more people want to use them than they are able to than they are willing to serve. That is a very nice place to play because they can charge whatever they want.
And do you think that looking at the figures, we obviously talk about the sort of the we'll say cheaper properties. Is that marketplace getting more competitive? So and obviously you've talked about how many agents are competing against other agents in their local area. Is that figure getting higher and higher? Because I know if you look at America, for example, they kind of work out how many agents per thousand people or 10,000 people. It's sort of like really compact. Is that on the up in the UK?
I mean, as far as I understand the data, and again, what I love about this conversation, I think, oh, there's another angle of research and data analysis I need to do. That's a really good, interesting topic. I'd say I've been in the industry for 10 years. The overall number of agencies hasn't really fluctuated hugely. Um, I think the type of models that are in the industry have changed. We obviously had the big wave that was the purple bricks wave. We now have the self-employment wave. But certainly for the 3 years we've been researching it, the number of competitors that people perceive they compete with is consistent, about 12. The number of agencies that local people can recall is pretty consistent between 3 and 4. But if we look at the price dynamic, which is that prices are falling for agents and have done for over a long time, longer than I've been in the industry, again, that would suggest from a pure economics perspective, supply of agents is exceeding demand. So as a result, prices are being suppressed. If you did have really tight licensing qualification and regulation, you would reduce the pool of estate agents and the price would have to rise because demand would exceed supply again. So the evidence that I can see, and you are going to make me now go and look at the data, aren't you, Chris? Because that's now piqued my interest. Um, And I say I'm seeing it certainly in a static shot or a snapshot of what's going on in the prime space is if you just model the data, there should be more prime estate agents than there are relative to the number of properties there are, but there aren't. And the data says prices they charge are higher. So that's demand, supply and demand. If prices are falling for agents, all other things being equal, it suggests it's getting more competitive.
So you mentioned demand there, so I'm going to segue beautifully into the next section where it comes about competition and instructions. So 36% of all agents said their biggest challenge was getting new vendors and landlords to engage with their business. I thought it'd actually be higher than that, if I'm honest with you. So 36% I was actually moderately happy with, but I wasn't a surprise that was a big figure there. And 3% said that finding buyers and tenants is their issue. What do you think that tells us about estate agency? Is it a kind of top of funnel issue across the board rather than a demand issue?
So, I think we all know, and it's a truism in the industry, that demand follows supply. In the sense that if you have the house, then there's only a finite supply of houses. So if you have the house that people want, then you will get the demand. So 100%, and similarly for tenanted properties as well. So if you have the house that people want to let or to rent, then you will get the demand. So yeah, 100%. Again, I am like you, surprised. I forget if we asked a question where you actually had to pick. You could pick more than one. Looking at the numbers, I suggest the data suggests. Just again, I should have read the background before I read the. I've read the report, but I've not actually looked at the methodology again since we did it back at the beginning of January. Is clearly this was the one thing. Yeah, the one thing, it does say the biggest thing. So it did allow people to pick other ones. Because there are agents out there who are doing absolutely fine. They don't need more buyer vendors. They don't need more landlords because they're doing perfectly fine. And that's a good chunk of the market. But for another chunk of the market, then yes, they need more vendors and more landlords. Because if they have and I hate the word, and I wish I could take out my lexicon, the stock, they will draw in the buyers. So it kind of makes sense that by head and shoulders, it's above anything else. Um, it's amazing. If only there was an answer to get more demand. What possible discipline could you apply to your business? What specialism would you need to create more demand for your business? I did marketing, squawketing. What's it called? Yeah, marketing. That would be the thing.
I am the junior apprentice when it comes to segueing on the podcast, clearly. So you mentioned,
Trust me, I will shoehorn marketing into the most inappropriate places, Chris. Seriously, we can wear any subject. I'll go, oh, well, the thing about marketing there is, I'm sure I could segue into the Epstein files, but let's just not.
Yeah, let's not go into that one. Let's not go into that one. So you did mention lettings though. So let's talk about lettings because this will
Yeah.
keep Hannah, Alison, and Rachel happy on my team. So it looked like the numbers of landlords were pretty stable in 25. Now I would have expected with all the we'll set stuff coming down the pipeline with regard to rental side, I would have expected more of a drop off with regard to the letting side of things. I would have expected more people to be like, screw this, I'm off. And certainly I've considered it, trust me. So what's going on there with sort of landlords in and out the market?
So I get lots of anecdotal feedback, and actually the data feedback as well is that there's been a lot of stories about landlords leaving the market. Let's try and break this down. The number of let properties is increasing. So, we are seeing some consolidation towards larger landlords. Yes. I think there's also a new breed of landlords coming through. So there's quite a lot of very good tax planning going on, and assets are being transferred. So, I saw some data from Simon Gates. I must get him to put it out again, actually, because that was really interesting. Is the demographic of landlords is changing in terms of a younger group coming through. So, we are currently going through a phase of the biggest transfer of wealth from one generation to the next, from the baby boomers to Gen X. A lot of those assets will be property assets, so they're moving. Um, in the nicest possible way to some of our older listeners, some of them are shuffling off this mortal coil, and their assets are also transferring across. But again, and I say this to all my friends and family, much to their annoyance all the time, is if you own a property, never sell it unless you have to. Let it, because it's the best investment class you will ever have. So hold on to that. So yeah, I have long heard the winds of change that the landlord population is going to collapse. It doesn't look like it is. But I also did some work with the guy, I think the aforementioned guys up in the Northwest, and we did some research for them locally, and then we did it nationally as well in terms of people's understanding of the Renters' Rights Act. And only 1 in 7 actually understand what the hell's going on. So we in the industry think, oh, people will exit the market because of all the changes that are coming. Most landlords are blissfully aware of what the Renters' Rights Act means to them. The excellent Sophie Lang has done a great landlord showdown in the Southwest. I know that David Adams from Cavendish is doing a great one up in the Northwest. As an industry, and this will please your lettings folks, is there's never been a better time to be a letting agent to show your expertise of what the changing legislation means. You know, if you do proper tenancy health checks, if you have a professional letting agent running your property, it still remains one of the best asset classes you can own. And you've got to really, I was talking to Nicola Blake, who runs the lettings team over at Cavendish up in the Northwest. You've got to really understand what your net yield actually is and how you maximize that rather than just going, oh, it's getting really, really hard now. Speak to a specialist, get a really good letting agent, get a highly recommended one, do a proper tenancy health check. You're better to keep tenants in than having tenants changing on a regular basis, and there's tricks and the trade to do that. Um, but I'm talking to a member of my family at the moment who owns a beautiful house in London, sorry, a flat in London, I should say. And I'm saying, don't sell it, let it. It's an incredible professional person's let. And that letting income would allow you to rent anywhere you wanted for the foreseeable future because it'll be significantly more than any rent you would want to pay anywhere else. So I think people like Ben, names out of my head, at the National Residential Lettings Agent Association, Ben Beadle,
Sure. Yeah.
great advice from him. There's a lot of letting agents there who can help you. But if you are a letting agent listening to this, go and read the data about how Renters' Rights Act means and communicate, because it's still a great time to be a landlord. And, as Kate Faulkner says at the recent Voice the Agent conference, is we need the PRS. The whole economy grinds to a halt if we mess up the PRS. Landlords aren't the enemy, tenants aren't their enemies. We need this sector to work, and it would be really nice to have a government who understood that.
It's funny, isn't it? I had a small landlord mental breakdown about a month ago and got an email from my lettings agent saying, these are all the things that need fixing in your property. And I was like, these clearly haven't come through in one go. Like, you've been sandbagging these for the last couple of weeks, clearly. And I thought to myself, for about 5 minutes, I was like, should I just get rid of the bloody thing? Should I just sell it off, sort of thing? And as with any guy at my age, I got ChatGPT up and I was like, let's have a conversation. I was like, "Well, act as if you are my counselor come financial planner with regard to the web estate.
Yeah.
Should I be selling this property?" And it was like, look, short-term pain, long-term gain, like take a breath, go and have a walk sort of thing. You'll be fine. Keep hold of it. And yeah, a month later, I'm like, yeah, I'm glad I kept it sort of thing. So I think it's, and where else would you put the money in reality?
Always rationalize your portfolio. I know Heather Staff spoke about this at the end of the Voice of the Agent conference in terms of the tech they've got in terms of understanding your property portfolio. Obviously, if you're an accidental landlord, then you need to do what's right for you. If you want to be more of a, albeit amateur professional landlord, look at your portfolio. The property you may own may not be the optimal property to take to I was gonna say take advantage. That's terror. My media trader would hate me for that. The property you own might not be the appropriate vehicle to maximize your yield in the property market. You may have it got a family executive kind of home, which is a certain type of letting market. If you were to release that into the sale market and therefore create a home for someone who wants to buy a home of that kind and maybe buy 2 or 3 rental flats, which are more entry level for the kind of people who don't have the level of deposit they need to buy, you're actually doing everyone a favor. You're releasing a residential home for a family who could own a home, and you're creating rental opportunities for people who can't afford to buy a home. And also, and this is the back to the point from Nicola over at Cavendish, you're maximizing your net yield because flats generally will appreciate higher than a family home unless you're very lucky where you're based.
Mm. So let's talk
So
about
be an active manager of your portfolio and talk to your letting agent about it. Say, look, I've got a £600,000 property. Would I be better to own 3 £200,000 flats or 6 £100,000 flats? Again, the great Lee O'Brien, who is the boss over at IAD, without breaching any confidences, I think he's got a property portfolio up in the northeast. He doesn't live in the northeast. It's just the best possible place for him to have a proper, but he's a serious property professional. You don't need to go that far to the other end of the country, but where I lived in Hertfordshire, Hemel, where I live, was not the right place to own a rental, but Luton, just up the road, would have been perfect. So if I owned a house in Hemel, my advice to myself, probably using ChatGPT, would have been to sell that and buy some rental property in Luton.
mm,
Be an active landlord, and you'll do well, and we all benefit from properties moving from the private residential space into the sale residential place, and more investment going into homes that people can rent at the beginning.
I'd always be hesitant buying a rental place in Luton. The reason why is because every time the 24 hours in police custody comes on, it's always in Luton. Every time that show comes on, I think to myself, house prices must take a dip every time this show comes out. Like every single time.
To all my friends in Luton, it's a lovely place. Just for the PR team over at Luton Town Council, it's a lovely place.
It is a lovely place. It is a lovely place. So let's talk about people's plans to sell then. 'Cause you've talked about people selling their properties and changing their sort of rental strategy. So you mentioned in the report that 70% of homeowners were kind of sticking. They were like, we're not selling, we're not buying, we're kind of just staying where we are at the moment. But 22% were planning and either buying a property, and about 8 were looking to sell. So that obviously shows there's people kind of looking more than they are looking to sell. So what does that kind of tell us about what the market is looking like at the moment?
Oh, now what page are we on now? To guide me on what
Oh,
page you're on.
I don't have the page in front of me. I'm pre-prepared that I've typed it
You
in
are
my notes.
seriously well. No, you've embarrassed me now. So,
Will they say to me, "I'll just throw this together"? I'll tell a whole bit.
well, no. You're very organised, and I'm clearly not as organised. And I wrote the bloody report. So which question is this?
So you've got with regard to what the
Well,
thoughts are with regard to owners looking to sell in the future. I think it's in the strategic intent section. So 70% of homeowners neither plan to sell or buy in 2026, but 22 were planning to buy, whereas 8% were thinking about selling. So what is that basically telling ourselves about what the market is doing?
um, probably what it always does is so those percentages you get. I'm going to have to write this down because this has blown my mind. This question because I need to.
So,
This is very rarely happens, Chris. You've actually stumped me.
oh, yeah, just talk about marketing quick.
No. I'm going to get into this because it's so rare I'm stumped. I like to be stumped. So 72%, what do they say?
So 70% of all homeowners are basically sticking. So they're not buying, they're not selling, they're just kind of, sitting on their hands basically.
Right.
22% are planning on buying a property and 8% are planning to sell.
That's it. Right, I completely understand it. I now remember. It's been a long week, Chris. Seriously, and I'm interviewing 7 people today for a client
Blimey.
to get them a job. So it's like my brain is addled a little bit. No, so what you've got there is the 95 rule that you got from the B2B Linked Institute, which is about 5% of the people are in the market at any one point. So, we know that I think 4.6% of properties are actually on the market at the moment. So, like 1 in 20 goes, here's the 5% rule, give or take. That 8% are thinking of selling kind of makes sense because some of them will be in the market, some will be on the cusp of being on the market. What that would lead to, basically, what I'm saying is what I said at the beginning is that's kind of what you would anticipate. You'd anticipate the market to be like that, with the vast majority of people sticking. The mistake you make then, if you're in business, is you target the 8% or you target the 22%. What you need to be doing is going, I need to build awareness amongst that 70%. So when they become part of that 22%, they're even more aware and they're doing proper research now. But I'm now one of the names that they're considering. So that when we get to the 8% and ultimately to the 5% who are actually in the market, I'm one of the, as I said earlier, the 3 brands that they recall. So all that data says is the market is exactly as we predict. It's doing exactly what markets do. There are the people in the market, the people out of the market, and this is middle group of people in the cusp. The percentages will adjust year on year, but the rule of thumb, half of your 8% are in the market, half of your 8% are just about to enter the market. But before you go like, oh, target just those people, think about the 70% because that's where all the money is. And over the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, in fact, go forward to 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 20 years, everyone is going to go through the market.
Mm.
So what you want to do is make sure you're targeting all the people. You have different messages to each one. For those people in the 70%, you want a broad, general branding message about how amazing you are and how you can help. For the 8% minus the 4.6%, 5% who are in the market is, we are the best people now, and look at our proof, look at sold in your areas, look at all that kind of stuff. So yeah, all it kind of says to me is the market is the shape. It always surprises me when the data just bears out what we already know.
Mm.
I mean, it would surprise me if it was like, only 25% of people are expecting to stick. Well, no, the vast majority of people are in their home for 7 to 13 years amongst houses that move. I think the average tenure in the UK ranges somewhere between 19 and 21 years for a house. So, yeah, people don't move that often. But what you need to do is be front of mind for the people when they start thinking about doing, not when they've already decided. Because again, let's take that prime example again. If I live in a £3 million house, I don't, before anyone gets excited. If I lived in a £3 million house and I'm not a yellow brand or a red brand, I need to be the third brand long before anyone else gets there. So I need to make sure I am talking to that person in the house because they're going to pick the yellow brand, they're going to pick the red brand. I kind of need them to pick the blue brand or the green brand or whatever my brand is, and not pick the purple brand or the other brand that's available out there. And the only way I'm going to do that is start my conversation with them months, years, a decade before they ever move. And the other thing, and again, David Adams at Cavendish thought this brilliantly, is it's really fun in this industry because we sell a house for someone, then we put them in witness protection and never talk to them again.
Yep.
So no, no, no. You've literally found them their home. Build a relationship, get recommendations, get testimonials, keep talking to them, send them Christmas cards, birthday cards, because they will move at some point. There was again Hugh Evans, who works at the agency. I was up in the Northwest. He went to see a lady who was selling a house, and she couldn't even remember that they're the ones who sold it to her. People don't remember over 7 to 13 years or 20 years. So you've got to stay front of mind at all time.
Something I was having a chat with Mark Burgess from Iceberg Digital the other day, who I
Yeah,
think is very,
yeah,
very clever. And he was saying to me, somewhere there is a company trying their hardest to get the information from your database. Like they're trying their hardest to find the details of people who are living in the local area, selling that is literally their job through Facebook ads and all these sort of business. You've got it on your database already. You're a mad person if you're not dealing with it and engaging with it on a regular basis to keep it warm on top of it. Rather, look at what you've got already and look after it rather than chasing the new shiny thing down the road. Because there's literally companies out there who would do anything to get your database and people you've moved house before and dealt with. Just deal with that as much as you possibly can do.
Yeah, 100%. And no, there is that kind of the rule of thumb is if you're established business, 2/3 of your future customers are already in your database.
Mm. Yep.
So not you. I mean, I was again talking to a company early this week, and they got a database of about 10,000 people, and they're emailing I think about 800 actively because they're in the market. It's like, how much does it cost to send an email? A big fat zero. Send an email to everybody. I mean, some people will say, I'm actually got a fantastic email legend speaking at the Voice of the Agent conference in November this year. Literally a guru of all gurus when it comes to email. And her view is send a daily email.
Mm.
You
Yep.
soon filter out. I don't say that, but her advice is if you send it daily, you'll get your loyalists and you'll get rid of your time wasters, and you'll soon know. And that is your most valuable data. And you're absolutely right, Chris. People are paying a fortune to get that data. They've already got it.
I have a bit of a hobby. This is a bit of a sad thing to admit. So if anybody has engaged in any of our lead magnets, download the book, all this sort of stuff, they go onto a nurture campaign straight away. It's all automated.
Yeah.
It's about 30 days and it's an email every single day. And my goal is to get as many people as possible to unsubscribe from that email because it's either you're on or you're off. I don't want to grow the database for the sake of it to go, oh, I've got a 10,000 person database. I don't really care about that. It's either you want to work with us or you don't. If you do, cool. If you don't, equally as cool, but you're either on or off. So if I annoy you enough for 30 days and you're around at the end of it, then probably it's looking quite good. If you clear off after email number 7, yeah, no hard feelings, no dramas.
Yeah, and for a huge number of people, getting an email from someone they've opted into, if they don't want to read it, they don't read it.
Mhm.
It's not like I am so mortally offended that you've sent me an email. If they feel that emotionally strongly about it, they're gonna unsubscribe anyway, and they're not gonna be a customer. The funny thing is when they then come back to you and ask you to do business for them, when they've unsubscribed and rejected everything, and they go, "Actually, could I have your help?" I've had 2 of them in 10 years, but it's really kind of amusing when they come back to you and go, a bit sheepishly, "Actually, I really need your help on something." It's like, "Okay, absolutely no problem at all. More than happy to take your money."
So you've been very generous with your time, to say the least, as always. So if there was one thing, if an agent read through the report,
Oh,
there's one thing they should take away and sort of action in their business or kind of take into their mind and go, actually, I'm going to look at things differently from now. What do you think that'd be one thing they'll take away from this report?
that's such a good question, Chris. I mean, first of all, there'll be a load of people who listen to this haven't read the report. So that's a really simple, quick win for me. Is just, hey, just go to weareunchained.co.uk / the voice of the agent and download the report. It is stroke on stroke, completely free. The only value exchange I ask is you give me your email address. But here's the trick about that email address: if you don't want to receive what we send, you can unsubscribe. So that's kind of like, it's a very quick transactional thing you could do is give your email address and then you can get out a list if you want to. But we just send a bunch of interesting marketing facts every single week. So it's kind of worth having just out of interest. And also we're constantly talking to people who are winning in the industry. And I talk to people winning in marketing because I want to basically win myself. Um, I think the key thing that I would take from this report is get the report out and compare your data with it. The best advice I can ever give to anyone about the Voice of the Agent reports is this is giving you a snapshot of what the industry on a whole thinks. You can either find the results that you put in originally or talk as a leadership team, or if you're self-employed, go and find a coffee shop and then work out where you sit. Because we all have this thing where we think we're right and we all think that what we think represents the market. But if you go through that report page by page, chart by chart, and go, I think this, what do my peers think? You are able to correct the confirmation biases in your head and go, actually, I think the market's really tough. The data says it isn't. So from a mindset perspective, I need to get out of myself and stop blaming the market and go, what is it that I'm doing that isn't getting the results that I want to see? Again, I've mentioned him already. Leo Bryan posted today on LinkedIn. Again, this is Friday the 13th when we record this, um, about the fact that, you're going to have failures. That's absolutely fine. You're going to have failures. Things aren't necessarily going the way you want them to go. But if you read what other people think and you reach out to people who kind of like are succeeding, you're gonna succeed. And it's possible that, things aren't going the way you plan. It takes 2 years to build a brand, certainly a personal brand. I cost 1 million impressions this week, and it's taken me 3 years to get there on LinkedIn. Didn't happen overnight. Is be consistent, but learn from other people. So that's a very long answer to saying, get the report, benchmark your results, and correct your own biases. That's why I release this data. Is we all think we know, but we have a very small snapshot of actually what's going on. This gives you a holistic view of what every agent in the UK thinks.
Excellent. I think we mentioned last time you came on the podcast, your nickname should be the postman because you deliver every single time. So, Simon, yet again, you have delivered first class service. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Absolute pleasure, Chris. See you again soon. Take care, mate.